Whoops. So I've gone ahead and traced the pattern onto this block of scrap wood, and the next step will be to trace the pattern onto the other side as well, so that we can line up our cuts, since we'll be using a hand saw. If we were using a band saw, we would only need to trace the pattern on one side. So to do this, all you have to do is take a square, or really anything with a 90-degree angle on it, like I could use this piece of paper here, and line up the paper with the bottom of the pumpkin here, so that we can mark exactly where that line should start from on this side. But since I have this square, I'll just use it. The saw that I'll be using is just a little simple pole saw that I got off Amazon at one point, probably around $10 or so. Just to be extra safe and extra secure, I'm going to use a clamp, and I'm going to clamp this block down, so now I won't have to focus my efforts on actually keeping this block on the table. I can focus more on sawing. So the first cut I'm going to do is right above the head, and I'm kind of eyeballing it right now to try to make sure it's a straight cut. That happens. Next cut will be along the back. There we go. Final cut for this type of cut will be right here. Alright, so here's my tiny little vise we'll be using. This is all we need for this project and a lot of other carvings. So I'm going to position it with the tail going into the vise. I'm going to tighten it up. Doesn't need to be extremely tight, but you don't want to be able to yank it out of here with the saw. We're just roughing out the basic shape, so this does not have to be perfect by any means. I'm cutting at a bit of a too steep of an angle here. That's okay. I'll correct it by pulling all the way out and making a new cut at a wider angle. Now we can meet that cut over here coming from the side of the pumpkin, and then I'll cut in towards the beak just a little bit. If we were using a different type of saw, like a coping saw, this is a coping saw here. If we were using this, we could actually make curved cuts, but the pole saw, I mean, at least the pole saw that I have cuts really fast, so I kind of like it. And for relatively non-complex patterns like this, where we don't really need to cut a lot of curves, this works just fine. The final cut that we'll make will be right under the tail, dividing the tail from the pumpkin. So we'll stick his head down in here like this. Ideally you'd be cutting straight down, but since we're always making two cuts to relieve the wood between shapes like this, we're kind of compromising. So instead of having one cut straight down and one cut at a flat angle like this, I'm positioning the wood so that we're having both cuts as close to straight down as possible. There we go. And the rest of it we can just work around with our knife. So here's our prepared block. With a band saw that would be even quicker, but this is a much more accessible tool, especially if you're just getting into carving. A pole saw like this is very easy to come by. So now we can start carving.